Hi everyone and welcome to Impact. I'm Nick Barber, your host for the government segment today, and my special guest is Chad Putnam. Chad is an advocate for the LGBT, that's the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Welcome, Chad. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good
Thanks
to
for
see
having
you.
me here today.
Yeah. What can you tell us about the organization and some of the issues that are current that the organization is facing?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So first, thanks again for the opportunity to be here with you today. And some of the topics that I'd like to talk with you about today is the recent Supreme Court ruling on marriage equality, which was landmark for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community, specifically in states where marriage equality already exists or where it will soon exist. Mm-hmm. And also I'd like to talk with you about GENDA, which is the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. That's more of a state initiative that's going on in relation to securing basic human right protections for the transgender community. Mm-hmm. And then I would like to share a little bit about the outcomes of our second annual Schenectady Pride event, which we had back on June 22nd.
Right, just recently?
Yep, just recently, here on J Street.
Yes.
And the last piece that I wanted to share, actually a report that just came out yesterday, put together by the Human Rights Campaign, and it's the Healthcare Equality Index. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to share a little bit more about that and how that's had some local participation, and that's new for this year.
Well, that'll be interesting because that's important to non-traditional relationships, that, sure. And healthcare is important to everyone. So.
Absolutely.
Cool. So why don't we start with the federal legislation, the first topic, which was, is that the HRC or?
Well, the marriage equality.
The marriage equality.
Yep.
All right.
Sure.
Tell us about what's affecting marriage equality state to state and what proposed legislation there is and what kind of changes may be coming.
Yeah. Well, just over a couple, actually 2 years ago, New York State passed same-sex marriage legislation. So now, as you know, in New York State, it's legal for same-sex couples to get married.
Yes.
And that was a great victory in New York. There were some fallouts for some Republican senators who voted in favor of the same-sex marriage bill in the upcoming elections that occurred. But it was a bipartisan support, and the bill did pass, and we do have marriage equality here in New York State, and that was a really exciting moment.
Well, sure, that's a landmark event.
Yeah.
Was the vote close, regardless of Republican Democrat? But was it a fairly close vote, or was it?
There was, I don't have the specific.
Well,
vote
you don't
numbers
need to give me the numbers, but I just wondered if it squeaked through or if it was. It wasn't a landslide, I'm sure, because it was very controversial.
Right, and the Senate was close to being split already, about 50-50 with regards to Democrats and Republicans. Right. So Andrew Cuomo did a lot of advocacy. The marriage equality movement did a lot of advocacy.
The governor did?
I believe there were 2 or 3 Republicans that signed on with the Democrats in the New York State Senate to make sure that it got it passed.
Point is, it passed.
It did.
And it's law now.
Right.
Yeah.
And, ironically, my partner and I, actually, he was having a bit of a stomach issue that night, and we had been following it on, the Senate as it was preparing to make the vote, and we actually ended up at the emergency room at Ellis Hospital.
Really?
And we were in there, he was in a hospital bed, and I was sitting there beside him watching the marriage vote come through. Yes. So it was a really profound moment for us because part of what comes with marriage equality, and this, when we talk about the healthcare piece later on, there are certain rights that come with marriage equality.
Yes.
And being able to be there and make important healthcare decisions for your loved one is one of those benefits. And saying, so when my partner and I get married, next year we're planning on doing so next
congratulations.
July.
Next, okay.
Right.
Next July.
It'll be part of the rights that we have is as a married couple in New York State is we be able to make those important decisions when it comes to healthcare and whatnot.
Well, I know there's other subsequent legislation and proposed things to follow after the marriage equality legislation was passed. Are we close, or is the community close to achieving the same benefits as a traditional married couple or a male-female traditional marriage? Yeah. Or is there a lot of work to be done to get more benefits and more equality as far as the legal contract.
Sure.
What's going on there?
Well, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I'll say that the Supreme Court ruling, which ended the Defense of Marriage Act, meant that same-sex couples that are now married in New York State can benefit from federal benefits, such as Social Security. So in the first year and a half, 2 years, when marriage equality was here in New York State, same-sex married couples could benefit from tax incentives and things like that as far as being a married couple.
Yes.
But when it came to filing their federal taxes, they had to file as single, not married, because the federal government had the Defense of Marriage Act, and they wouldn't allow you to claim the benefits that heterosexual couples were receiving that were married. So with the end of DOMA, now myself and my partner, when we get married next year, we'll be able to benefit not only from the state benefits of marriage, but also the national benefits, including Social Security and other important benefits.
They are important. If you're going to spend a lifetime together, and that's always the the expectation and the promise when you get married, those benefits are extremely important.
Yeah. One issue that we still have, and that was not cleared up by the Supreme Court, is that if my partner and I were to move to Florida, in a state where same-sex marriage is not recognized or not law, then we would not be seen as married in the eyes of Florida.
Is that because it's state legislation and not federal legislation?
Correct.
And it's state to state?
The federal government would
But wait,
still be able to recognize
I'm going to interrupt you. You get married in New York State because it's legal.
Right.
Right? The law's been passed. So you're married in the eyes of New York State or in the eyes of what other authorities, religious or legal. So if you move to another state, you're not recognized as being married, even though...
If that state does not recognize same-sex marriages. Correct. Yeah. And
that's a tough one.
And that's where the inequality still exists.
Yeah.
So the fact that my partner and I don't have the freedom to move about the 50 states after being married and still be recognized as a married couple is an inequality. It still leaves us as second-class citizens.
So as it stands, if say you wanted to move for another state, employment opportunity or just better life, better quality of life, whatever, you'd have to select a state that has
same-sex
marriage equality legally.
In essence.
Yeah, so you're restricted. Yeah.
We're restricted. And
so you got to work on that issue, right?
We do. So there's more work to be done, and the Human Rights Campaign is really leading the charge. There's a number of state groups that are doing a lot of advocacy around marriage equality throughout. So.
Well, wouldn't the solution be to have a federal legislation that would recognize same-sex marriage, and that would cover all the states? Well, is that a possibility, or is that like pie-in-the-sky expectations?
There was a hope that the Supreme Court would be able to extend its decision and include that in their Defense of Marriage Act ruling, but unfortunately they did not go that far. I think that the federal government continues to see that states' rights is a huge issue. Yeah. And they want to ensure that the states have the opportunity to create their own laws and whatnot. And the Supreme Court did not go that far.
So as it stands today, that's a real uphill battle. I'm asking your opinion. I mean,
we have, in essence, another 30 some states that need to pass same-sex marriage equality before we'll have the equal freedoms, unless there's some type of effort that the federal government can do, either in the executive office or another legislation can be passed through both the Senate and the House of Representatives on the national level. So.
We've been visiting with Chad Putnam here on Impact, and he's an advocate for LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. And there's a couple of other legislative issues that you wanted to talk about. Why don't you just go down your list? What's the next one?
The next we have is GENDA. GENDA is the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. So over a decade ago, the New York State Legislature, along with the governor at the time, passed what they called SONDA, which is the Sexual Orientation and Gender Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act. So being a gay male that's out in the community, that bill and what became law created, put sexual orientation under the New York State protected classes of human rights. So along with race and gender, sexual orientation was added. So I cannot be fired from employment or kicked out of housing or public accommodations because of my sexual orientation.
Yes.
So with the LGBT community, the transgender community, does not experience that same human right protections. So if I'm male, right, born male, and I identify that my preferred gender is female, or I'm more inclined to be or feel female, and I want to express that. And there's some really incredible, powerful folks who are part of the transgender community that live bravely each and every day, despite the lack of human right protections. That are out there. It's just amazing the amount of courage it takes to present as a gender opposite.
I can only imagine, but I respect that. Yeah, absolutely.
So these folks, the transgender community does not have the same basic human right protections. So they're still at risk in New York State from being discriminated against based on their gender identity or expression, which is not okay. And so the New York State Assembly has passed GENDA, the bill that would add gender expression identity to the human right classes 6 years in a row. And the New York State Senate continues to be the stumbling block. And locally we have a senator who has not voted in favor of it. But locally also, the City of Schenectady passed a resolution of support for GENDA back in November 2011. Or 2012 actually. And then just actually this past Tuesday, the Schenectady County Legislature passed a resolution of support for GENDA.
They did.
So we have local community and county support for the passage of GENDA on the state level.
Supportive resolutions, and you know, that's what you need when you're trying to convince, especially the powerful New York State Senate, to achieve and get legislation approved, is when you get other, especially governments and other respectable, active parties or groups to lobby the Senate, that's where you gain ground. Sometimes it takes years. And it's been 6 years now that the Assembly passed it.
The Assembly's passed it.
And the Senate is resisting.
And this is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue.
Well, it's not political, but it's of course, it's #1 human rights. But I imagine some legislators look at it as political, because they're all political. You know, when you get into government and you know, the state legislature, everything seems to be political. But it certainly is a human rights issue.
And the Empire State Pride Agenda, which is the New York State advocacy group that was really behind marriage equality and continues to push for GENDA, has a number of really great resources. If folks are looking for more information on GENDA, they can go to the Empire State Pride Agenda's website and learn more about GENDA.
Empire State
Pride Agenda.
Pride Agenda's website. You were talking about well, the Schenectady Pride event. How did that go, and what type of publicity and positive help did that give? What's the purpose of it? First of all, the purpose is to claim you know, your issues and your beliefs. But what do you get out of that? What good comes out of that that type of event? Schenectady Pride. I know down in New York City they have big events too. So what was that experience like, and what were the positives?
Sure. Schenectady Pride, really the purpose behind Schenectady Pride is, one, to celebrate the community. So 1969, the beginning of the Stonewall riots, and since then we've continued to fight for equality, and you know, to have Supreme Court rulings come out just this, actually June, right? Just this past month, that helped our community gain equality on the national level. We still need to continue to claim our prideful place in the larger community. So pride is very important because the advocacy, that work continues. And the other piece is Schenectady Pride really is an opportunity to engage with the larger community. Schenectady Pride partnered with Proctors, was a huge support this year. The Downtown Schenectady Improvement Corporation continues to support Schenectady Pride. We worked with the J Street merchants, many of whom are either gay or lesbian owners or allies of the LGBT community. So it was about engaging the larger community to come in and celebrate with us. So we had a number of live performances. We encouraged folks to visit the merchants on J Street, whether it was for lunch or dinner or to do some shopping. and just really celebrate.
Celebration, it's public relations,
Right.
and it's economic development because it brings people down.
Right.
You know, and supports the businesses.
Yeah, and part of Schenectady Pride is pride in Schenectady. Schenectady has so much to offer and really is growing in so many different ways.
Yes.
And it was important for the group behind Schenectady Pride, the committee involved, to bring folks from the capital region into Schenectady so they can begin to see all that we have to offer.
Yeah. With all of these goals, especially legislatively, which some legislators think it's political, but they're human rights issues, does the LGBT community have an advocacy or lobbying lobbyists to do this? How do you lobby the legislature or inform them or try to convince them? Do you have a paid lobbyist? Is there a statewide organization? Volunteers? How do you lobby the legislature and inform them and educate them?
Sure. Well, there's several different groups that are out there doing this important work. On the state level, I had mentioned the Empire State Pride Agenda really is our state level advocacy organization for the LGBT community. On the local level and through districts and regions throughout New York State and the nation, there's numbers of nonprofit organizations. For them to do advocacy or lobbying, it's really kind of a gray line. They can inform their constituents or their consumers about the issues. For example, I'm involved with Rainbow Access Initiative, which is a local LGBT healthcare advocacy organization. So we can inform folks about the needs of the LGBT community. We can attend and have meetings with our senators and assembly members to educate and inform them, but we can't necessarily engage in the political process.
Well, you're not registered lobbyists, but
Correct.
you can certainly advocate and,
Right.
and get the word out.
Right.
Which brings us to the, like you said, healthcare issues. What's next on your list? The HRC? What do you want to talk about next?
Sure. So one of the other hats that I wear as an LGBT advocate is I'm on the board for Rainbow Access Initiative, which is a local nonprofit LGBT advocacy organization for healthcare equality. And we serve the Capital District.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, we took on the mission of promoting a program called, it's affiliated with the Human Rights Campaign. So folks know the blue square with the yellow equal sign, that's the Human Rights Campaign.
Okay.
So they created, years ago, they created a program called the Corporate Equality Index. And that was a tool that corporations throughout America could participate in to show that they're engaged in LGBT healthcare equality, that they have non-discrimination policies around practices and employment that are LGBT inclusive. And so they've expanded that to the healthcare industry. And up until this year, there hasn't been any major medical centers in the Capital District that have participated in the Healthcare Equality Index. So there's 4 pieces that the criteria that the index really looks for, and this is a self-survey that hospitals and medical centers can perform themselves. They look for an anti-discrimination policy around patient policies and procedures, a non-discrimination policy around employment when it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity.
Yes.
And they also want to see inclusive policies around visitation. So if I'm a same-sex couple and my child is in the hospital, both moms can come in and visit with the child. One mom isn't asked to stay out because the child shouldn't have 2 moms. They should, you know, as some of the old thinking has been.
Yes.
And then the last piece is that the hospital administration have to go through LGBT cultural competency trainings to help bring them up to the level to ensure that their services are LGBT appropriate and sensitive.
Yes.
So we're excited. Just actually yesterday, the report came out, and both Saratoga Hospital and Albany Medical Center submitted their surveys and came out as leaders in LGBT healthcare.
That's a big breakthrough because you got to crack that first one. No,
Right.
There's got to be 1 or 2 at the same time.
Right.
And then the rest of it, you try to snowball it. In any issue, with any legislation, any acceptance of policy or change. So it sounds like you've had a lot of success, and there's more work to be done.
Yes.
And is there anything else you'd like to talk about? I know you had specific topics.
No, I would just encourage folks, if they'd like to learn more about what's happening in the local area, to visit SchenectadyPride.org.
Right.
Or you can find us on Facebook, Schenectady Pride on Facebook.
Okay.
If you're interested in learning more about the LGBT healthcare advocacy work we're doing, that's Rainbow Access Initiative. That is at Rainbow Access Initiative on Facebook.
Okay.
We also have rainbowaccess.org is our website. And we also have a blog, which is www.rai-health.org. So there's a number of ways that folks can learn more about what's happening in the capital
We'll
region.
try to get a couple of those references and websites up on the screen. So we've been visiting with Chad Putnam, and he's an advocate for LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. You're doing great work. Congratulations on your upcoming marriage.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to visit us, and keep up the good work. We wish you well. And maybe you'll come back again, Chad, and give us a status update as things develop and progress as far as legislation and rights. And again, this is a human rights issue, and I congratulate you on your good work.
Thank you so
thanks
much.
for coming to visit with us here on Impact.
Absolutely.
And I hope you come back again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. You've been watching Impact. I'm Nick Barber, your host. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.